Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, great to see you all. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be able to share so much news with all of you today. Thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to the Greater El Paso Chamber of Commerce team who made today happen. And thank you also to my staff who really went above and beyond in trying to make sure this was as enjoyable an experience for all of you as possible. A few weeks ago, actually several weeks ago, I came home from work after a particularly stressful, exhausting, and difficult day of negotiations, which I'll talk about later in the speech, and I was mentally and emotionally beat when my husband says, "Well, you know what they say, may you live in interesting times." And before I kicked him, I thought to myself, well, actually it's not a saying, it's a curse. And along with that curse, there should be a companion saying, and may you have ibuprofen and the occasional tequila shot readily available to help with those interesting times kind of days. But all kidding aside, this actually has been a very eventful year for El Paso County. There is so much to share, so much good news, but because of time limitations, I'm going to focus on only a handful of issues. I'll be sharing with you the outcome of some of the policy reforms and changes we've made over the last few years, and then I'll also share with you what's ahead for the county. This is my 5th State of the County address. Those of you who have attended the 4 prior speeches know that the county has been deep in transformation and reform. We engaged in that work because we wanted an organization that would take its rightful role as a major player in building a better community and elevating our region. In prior speeches, I explained to all of you that we needed to modernize, streamline, strengthen the organization. Many of those decisions we believed would also save us money. And in fact, that's exactly what we're seeing today. In case you missed it, this year we passed a no new taxes budget. In fact, we went below the effective tax rate and adopted last year's tax rate. And every taxing entity within our purview, including University Medical Center, the Emergency Services Districts numbers 1 and 2, they did the same at our request. This was possible at the county in large part because of the changes that we instituted. So, what are some of those examples? The area where we have seen the most significant savings has been in law enforcement, in part because of the changes that Sheriff Richard Wiles made through civilianization and by his reductions in overtime. Is the sheriff here? I think he was. Sheriff, thank you so much for always being such a great leader in your organization and looking for ways to help us save money and reduce costs. We're very grateful to you. But some of those savings also were due in large part to changes that the Commissioners Court made in the collective bargaining agreement with the El Paso County Sheriff's Association. I mentioned it briefly last year, but this contract was a significant pressure point for us every year in our budget. Largely, these pressures came in the form of salary and benefit increases. And in fact, the contract was so rich that many of our tax increases year after year were attributable to the almost 5-year additional increase every year as a result of that contract. As you can imagine, changing a contract of this magnitude wasn't easy, and it took political will to get it done. But the savings from these combined efforts in law enforcement have essentially brought costs that were increasing every single year, and they've swung in the opposite direction into savings. This year alone, the total savings to our law enforcement budget was $4.5 million. And because of some of the decisions and the changes that we made in that contract, and because of the way that we capped benefits going forward, the taxpayer will continue to reap benefits going into the future. In 2012, I also told you about the need to invest in our infrastructure and technology and to rethink the way that we approached capital funding. So how is that going? In terms of capital investments, we made the decision to dedicate 1 penny from our tax rate to small capital funding. We did this so that the county could buy items with a limited lifespan using cash instead of issuing debt for those items. That business decision in 2012 saves us $750,000 annually in interest. We also passed a bond issuance to replace outdated infrastructure. That issuance included several large items of note. So how are those going? Well, the replacement of our enterprise resource planning system, it always sounds like a Star Trek thing to me. It's called the ERP. It's the first software upgrade to our financial and HR system since 1985. This move will greatly increase employee productivity and will allow budget writers and policymakers access to the data that we need in order to make sound decisions. Our jail expansion project, which adds over 400 beds to the East Side Annex, that will be open, completed in July of next year. That will allow the sheriff to move inmates, or trustees, as I'm sure they prefer to be called, from the costly downtown jail to the more efficient, modern annex on the east side. That will save us money as well, and that project on time and on budget. We also built 2 new annexes, one in the far east side, one in northwest El Paso. The annexes take necessary county services out into the areas and the communities where the citizens are and that are high-growth areas. Both of those projects completed ahead of schedule and under budget. The Escarate Annex, which is right at the Escarate Park Annex and right at the corner of Delta. It was formerly the Army Reserve building, and frankly, it was a blighted property. It is now renovated, it beautifies that corner, and it houses a more modern and convenient tax assessor collector office. That project, on time and on budget. These annexes don't just help us meet the growing needs of the community by taking services out to them, but they also allow us to get out of costly long-term leases so that we can ultimately save you money in that arena as well. We've replaced our aging fleet. In fact, I think 45% of the sheriff's fleet is now replaced. So we're no longer spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on maintaining vehicles that should have been retired long ago, putting good money after bad. That fleet replacement plan is still on track, and it is taking place countywide. We also upgraded our law enforcement radio system to ensure there's no gaps in service in the outlying areas so that we can keep our safe city designation intact. All other construction and reconstruction projects that were in that bond were completed on time and on budget. And so much of the thanks and recognition goes to our Public Works Department, led by Pat. You all have heard, we were able to lure out of retirement so that she could come and run the department and provide important leadership that that department really needed. I know her team really appreciates her. The rest of the county does as well. Thank you, Pat. Last year, I also shared with you some of the changes that were on the horizon in the administration of the criminal justice system. These changes were a consequence of discussions and some heated debates spearheaded by County Commissioner Vince Bettis, his staff, and the amazing research that they provided the Commissioner's Court. The changes are multifaceted, they are considerable, they are comprehensive, and they are historic. Among them is the consolidation of already existing pretrial positions that were scattered around various departments at the county. Those functions will now operate under a new department with a new department head in a new position. His name is Michael Rodriguez. He'll start work next week. He brings with him 30 years of experience in the criminal justice system. He believes in using technology to improve processes, and he understands the importance of balancing community safety with managing incarceration costs. He was selected by a diverse group of county leaders from the judiciary, from Commissioner's Court, and from county administration. We are really looking forward to his leadership and the changes that he too will bring to the organization. The changes to the criminal justice system at the county also include expanding access to jail magistrates. We currently only have one jail magistrate on staff at the county who works weekdays 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which means that those charged with an offense have to wait, sometimes as long as a weekend or over holidays, in order to see a magistrate. Next week, we'll be adding 3 more full-time magistrates in order to have 24/7 jail magistration available. What this means to the taxpayer is that booking, the setting of bonds, qualifying for legal counsel, being assessed for mental health conditions, and the overall process will be more efficient. And then what that means is that it will reduce the amount of time that people spend in jail pre-conviction, missing work and time away from their families. It will also reduce the work and the tremendous expense involved in putting people into jail, thereby reducing the costs to us, to you, the taxpayer, to provide them food, shelter, supervision, and medical care. Another change we've made to our jail system and how we've chosen to address the needs of the mentally ill. This is a discussion actually that's happening all over the country, finally. And there's an acknowledgement nationwide that unfortunately too many of our mentally ill in America populate our jails. And not just once, but in what is a seeming revolving door. And in a state like Texas that doesn't offer adequate funding or assistance to the mentally ill, we are particularly susceptible to jailing those who need mental health care treatment instead. The Commissioner's Court decided to invest instead in mental health care screening and diversion as a way to more appropriately deal with the individuals who come through our doors. This past Monday, in fact, we approved a contract with Emergence Health Network, and I think Christy Doherty is here somewhere, but I'm so grateful to her for her leadership and for the services that they'll be offering. We are embarking on a new initiative with EHN. They will be providing the county an extensive menu of services inside and outside the jail, including thorough assessments at intake, crisis intervention, a psychiatrist and 24/7 prescriber, referrals to appropriate community services, individual treatment plans, training for our sheriff's office personnel, counseling, PTSD services, and more. And what is critical to us, the policymakers, those that you elect and put in place to write the budgets, is that EHN will collect the data, provide it to us, so that we can assess what's working, what's not working, where the gaps are, and what more we need to do going forward. This new approach to dealing with incarceration is more practical, it's more just, it's more humane, and it is more reflective of the kind of organization that we are and the kind of community that El Paso is known to be. The goals of all of these criminal justice reforms combined are to more appropriately, efficiently, and transparently manage the processes that are not judicial, but which are administrative in nature, and to continue to decrease the costs of incarceration. These changes would not have been possible without tremendous support and collaboration and leadership from everyone involved in reforming the process, including Commissioner's Court, members of the judiciary, Sheriff Richard Wiles, County Attorney Joanne Bernal, Assistant County Attorneys Joe Gonzalez and Signe Niemer, District Attorney Jaime Esparza, District Clerk Norma Favela, our Public Defender Jaime Gandara, the Probation Department, County Court Administration, Human Resources, our financial team led by the amazing and talented Executive Director of Budget, Wally Hartgrove, State Representative Joe Moody, and Senator Jose Rodriguez, who sponsored legislation for us in order to make some of this possible, and of course, County Commissioner Vince Bettis, who led the discussion in the first place. I'm listing all of these partners' names, and I want you to hear who they are, because it's so important for the community to understand that things cannot turn on a dime. And processes that are this wide in scope require a lot of collaboration, and I am so proud of the collaboration that took place. It's going to be hard to predict what the overall savings will be to the jail costs, but we know for certain there will be a reduction this year, and that it will be a reduction that will go forward. We also know, more importantly, that these changes mean that people, the citizens of this community, won't needlessly languish in jail. Something that's costly for us, but something that is very costly for our community. Speaking of consolidation and administration, this was the first fiscal year that we embarked on central administration, which also brought together various and mostly already existing functions and staff throughout the county under one department and one leader, the chief administrator. This, too, was an historic first for El Paso County and has transformed the way that we govern. Under central administration, we consolidated budget, fleet, grants, operation analysis, agenda management, contract administration. There are no more costly committees that govern the organization. There's greater accountability, there's greater efficiency, and as you just heard, a focus on policy development. And one thing that I'm very proud to share is that every member of Commissioners Court is on board, having acknowledged the benefits of this change, the improvements to the organization, and how much better it makes us at governance and oversight. As you're probably aware, the Commissioners Court parted ways with our first administrator, but that has not stopped our trajectory. In the meantime, nothing is pausing, everything is full steam ahead, and it's due in thanks to the fact that Betsy Keller, the assistant administrator, is now the interim. And she has taken on the charge of leading the department, and her team has taken on the added responsibilities while we wait for the permanent replacement, the right person for the job. An update that I'd like to give you on another decision that we made, this one from 2013, is the adoption of the $10 vehicle registration fee, or the VRF. It generates annually $6.25 million. But under the leadership, the powerful leadership of then Commission Chairman Ted Houghton, we were able to leverage that money and produce over $400 million in transportation infrastructure projects. The timeline and the scope of the projects are both impressive. So we passed the fee in 2013. In fiscal year 2015, 3 projects were let, totaling $205 million. In fiscal year 16, 9 projects will be let, totaling $123 million. And in fiscal year 2017, 4 projects will be let for $60 million, and in 19, 2 projects will be let for $42 million. And El Paso County will continue to leverage that revenue stream going into the future in order to enhance our transportation infrastructure system and continue to address the community's chronic needs. I am very proud of the way that El Paso County has become a transportation leader and will continue to be as a result of our investments. And make no mistake about it, transportation is key to economic development. Economic development. It is undoubtedly a priority for every leader in this community, along with job creation, job retention, raising wages, and building a stronger tax base. And while collaborative efforts Collaborative strategic efforts are definitely important, and believe me, at the county, we support all the collaborative efforts. But we also know that each spoke in the economic development wheel needs to be a strong contributor. During this year's strategic planning session, which the Commissioners Court held at the county, we decided that we needed to reevaluate our incentives. We needed to think through what kind of targeting we would be interested in doing in the future. How could we leverage our assets? And what other ways could we further engage in economic development? To that end, last week, we hired Market Street, an economic development consulting firm that's going to come on board and help us develop the county's economic development action agenda. We should have a plan in the next 100 days. I am very excited about this and what ideas, what incentive policies, and what strategic goals may come from the Commissioners Court discussions with Market Street. It's clear to me that when it comes to economic development, our community needs more strategies at work. We've made some great gains in El Paso, but we are still struggling with wages and with getting El Pasoans access to significantly more and better jobs. With respect to wages, I'm very proud of the fact that both University Medical Center and El Paso County set a minimum wage, a living wage of $10 for all of our employees, so that no one at the county or at UMC makes less than $10. We know that it's very hard for a family to get by when they are not paid a living wage. I believe the city of El Paso did that as well, and if they did, I'm very proud that they did so. The county is also updating its prevailing wage survey so that individuals who work on our construction projects are guaranteed a fair wage when they work for the public. It will take all of us, not just the public sector, but the private sector as well, working to ensure that El Pasoans don't continue to lag behind when it comes to wages. I can tell you that that is why it makes it difficult for us to recruit and retain talent. It's those stagnant wages. Existing jobs in El Paso must all achieve that fair wage standard. It's good for the employees, it's good for your organizations, and it's good for the local economy. But what else can we do? I want to share with you something that a group of leaders has shared with me. I have spent some time listening to business people and community leaders who I have tremendous respect for, asking them for their ideas about what we can do, what more we can do to grow El Paso's economy in a way that makes the most sense. And in these discussions, we all agree that recruiting outside businesses to El Paso needs to continue. There's no doubt that those efforts are important. But the added consensus that I've heard is that we aren't doing enough as a community to support the talent that we already have here. The questions I were asked by these community leaders were pretty important, and I want to share them with you. I was asked, what are we doing to grow El Paso's own corporate CEOs? What are we doing to support these successful entrepreneurs who are risking their own capital? How are we helping them grow from 100 employees to 1,000 employees, or from 1,000 employees to 10,000 employees? When I think about all of the times I've spoken with companies considering relocating to El Paso, there's always the need for the pitch about why El Paso is a great place to be. And believe me, I have absolutely no problem making that pitch and doing so enthusiastically. I love El Paso, and I love preaching about El Paso to anyone who will listen. But our successful company leaders, people like Lane Gaddy, like Octavio Gomez, Miguel Fernandez, and others, they are already in love with El Paso. They are our true believers and are risk-taking entrepreneurs, and they're right here at home. How do we best help them and those like them? I know that we can think of a way. We need to. Again, we absolutely need to continue our efforts to recruit from the outside, but we need a strategy to create our own corporate headquarters led by El Pasoans who are the true believers and who are committed to our future. As one of those leaders told me, he said, "We need to do a better job of charting and controlling our own destiny." It's my hope that El Paso County can assist with that as we rethink our economic development strategies. In fact, I know we can. Healthcare is one of those areas where we are really charting our own destiny. Over 15 years ago, long before I ever entered public service or elected office, El Pasoans came together and decided that healthcare was one of the sectors we would pursue in order to deal with our chronic problems. Problems like having a high uninsured rate, having too few doctors, few healthcare facilities, inadequate access to healthcare services, and low wages. Growing the healthcare sector and supporting a four-year medical school, growing our own doctors, these were goals our community rallied around. Furthermore, creating and supporting the Medical Center of the Americas, a medical center hub that would be a strong economic driver, that was another goal. Well, University Medical Center, our hospital district, continues to grow and create both increased access to affordable health care and great jobs as well. 2 weeks ago, we broke ground on the newest addition to El Paso's healthcare landscape, the Eastside Clinic, which is the first of 3 new clinics that UMC is building. That clinic will open in January 2017. It will create 100 new jobs, and it will offer an estimated 50,000 patient visits annually. The Northwest Clinic will see its groundbreaking in December of this year, will open its doors in May of 2017. It too will offer 100 new jobs and access points for 50,000 patients. And the Central Clinic, which will be in the heart of the Medical Center of the Americas, it will break ground in winter of next year, another 100 new jobs, and another 50,000 patient visits. Along with what is happening with our private sector counterparts, I am very excited about El Paso's healthcare future. Another important asset, which you might have read a little bit about recently, is the El Paso Children's Hospital. UMC will be acquiring El Paso Children's Hospital as an affiliate, as part of the bankruptcy process, and we hope that process will be over by year's end. Our goal was not just to save a struggling company and the jobs and the clinical care that it provides, but also our goal was to save and safeguard a mission and a vision that began long before that hospital was built or opened its doors. In my comments moments ago about economic development, I shared what I've heard from smart, talented business people and leaders about asserting control over our future as an important strategy for this community's success. In fact, that was the impetus behind the medical school. Well, this company that UMC is engaging in a strategic partnership with, El Paso Children's Hospital, it is a critical asset for our region. And the decisions that we made during our negotiations effectively brought an end to the costly litigation that El Paso Children's Hospital filed against UMC. They are making a key partner, our medical school, whole in the process, and they are bringing closure to a costly and what would have been lengthy bankruptcy process. The decision was made by a diverse group of El Pasoans. 7 people, very diverse voices on your UMC board, overseen by 5 people elected by you to your commissioner's court. And we made our decision based on information provided by a number of lawyers, financial advisors, the executive leadership team, budget writers, consultants, and healthcare experts. After 20 months, countless meetings, grinding negotiations, and mountains of information, the fact is that we all agreed on our plan of action going forward. This does not always happen, but in this case, it did. We were all in agreement. El Paso Children's Hospital is worth saving. It is the only dedicated pediatric hospital within 200 miles, and it's a very important partner to our community's medical school. The Texas Tech Health Sciences Center Paul L. Foster School of Medicine and its team of 50 clinical providers, primarily physicians, and 45 residents who go to work there every single day. The partnership between El Paso Children's Hospital and Texas Tech represents a little over $11 million a year in contracts annually for Tech. El Paso Children's Hospital employs high-caliber specialists, subspecialists, highly trained nurses and clinical staff, and they have been successful in significantly reducing the out-migration of our littlest patients. And as a result of the joint plan between Commissioners Court, UMC, and El Paso Children's Hospital will remain locally owned and locally controlled. The very conservative 5-year pro formas filed last week demonstrate that with some changes, with implementation of good business practices, a hardworking board, a hardworking CEO, with stability and leadership, the hospital can break even and will not be a burden on the taxpayer. And by the way, speaking of a new board for El Paso Children's Hospital, I cannot emphasize enough to all of you in this room that we need strong, experienced, respected members of our community to step up. As has been my experience when I've tried to recruit for the UMC board, I'm finding that too many people can't or won't serve. And we need good leaders now more than ever. Once stability occurs, El Paso Children's Hospital will begin to repay its debt to UMC. It will take time, but it will pay it back. And in the meantime, I'm incredibly happy to report that the El Paso Children's Hospital doors stay open. There will be no interruption in service. The 400 jobs stay intact. The doctors stay in El Paso. The medical school keeps a key partner, and our families maintain access to an outstanding source of health care in a region that badly needs it. We did it, and I'm very proud of it. Thank you. There will be still so much hard work ahead for the new El Paso Children's Hospital Board, for UMC, and for the county. That will include continued collaboration with the Health and Human Services Commission, or HHSC. We are going to have to deal with decisions that the former board made, and I want to recognize Senator Jose Rodriguez because his office has been instrumental in helping us navigate through those difficult conversations. I also want to recognize the UMC and the county lawyers who've done an incredible job of making sure that HHSC is with us in saving the hospital and not harming the community. And I also want to thank Congressman Beto O'Rourke and his staff for the help they've given us at the federal level. Preserving the vision and the mission was paramount to all of us who were involved, and we were not willing to surrender this community asset. I know that the process wasn't pretty, but I am certain that we will look back and we will be so glad and we will never regret having saved El Paso Children's Hospital. I also need to recognize the work done by the UMC board during these very difficult times. They so very generously devoted their time and energy to the process. And I want to especially thank Chairman Steve DeGroat and past Chair Tracy Yellen, who were just stellar. Their leadership was unwavering, it was dedicated, it was solid, and it was free. They are volunteers. The commitment from their colleagues, who also generously gave of their time, was enormous as well. Our volunteer board members gave up thousands of hours of their time they could have spent at work or building their businesses or with their families, and they did it all to help UMC and the county. They made big sacrifices, and they dedicated their public service to our community. I am so grateful to them, especially these last 20 months. They were doing God's work. Together with the dedicated staff at UMC, people like Michael Nunez and Letty Flores and Maria Zampini, they navigated through turbulent times, and they passed a budget with no new taxes. And again, a tax rate that went below the effective tax rate. And they did this in a year when we're breaking ground on 2 new clinics and when El Paso Children's Hospital is becoming a subsidiary of the hospital district. I also want to recognize and publicly thank Jim Valenti, who dedicated the last decade of his life to that campus. The modernization, the investment, the growth and care there is a reflection of his commitment to UMC, and we are all grateful for it. We wish him the best of luck in his new journey beginning next year. Earlier, I mentioned the relationship between Texas Tech and El Paso Children's. Last year, I showed you a graph that demonstrated the annual increase in investment from UMC in the medical school. This year, we approved a budget at UMC with $56 million in contracts with Texas Tech. You couple that with El Paso Children's Hospital's $11 million, and that represents a $77 million partnership between all those entities. We are part of an impressive clinical and economic development engine that is helping transform our region. I am so proud that we are doing our part to contribute to the dream of world-class healthcare and a world-class healthcare center right here on the U.S.-Mexico border. I have so many more projects and plans to share with you. For example, in 2016, the county is bringing back the county fair. We think it'll be a fun new event with a traditional twist to add to our quality of life. We're also investing more in our parks, including our rural parks in the Far East, Lower Valley, and Northwest parts of town. We recently hired a new parks manager. We're evaluating ways to better leverage our assets like the Fabens Airport. I bet you didn't know we had a Fabens Airport, but we do, and we will have an announcement coming soon about it, we hope, and we think it'll be out of this world. There's so much to share and not enough time. Before I wrap up, though, I do again want to recognize some extraordinary people, because the county obviously is more than just one person. It is a collection of talented leaders. I want to thank the members or the team in the new Office of County Administration and our department heads who have taken all the ups and downs associated with the changing landscape like such pros, and whose positive can-do attitude is inspiring to all of us. Thanks also to all of the elected and appointed officials at the county, there are too many to name, who choose to be part of the team and engage knowing that we're on the same side. But a special thank you to County Attorney Joanne Bernal and her staff. She's not just a great leader, but she is a trusted leader, and she's someone who makes things happen. She and her staff are always looking for ways to ensure that we get the best out of the organization every day. I thank her for her leadership and her friendship. Ruben Vode, Celeste Varela, and Nicole Ruiz, who make the wheels turn in your county judge's office every day. They are amazing people, talented, loyal, devoted, hardworking. They snazz things up, as you saw today. I don't know how I got so lucky to have you all on my team, but you're like family, and in fact, they're sitting with my family, my mom, Isabel, my husband, Michael, my daughter, Eloisa. I love you all. And finally, my colleagues on the court, if you'll give me just one more second to brag on the people that I am privileged to work alongside. Commissioner Andrew Haggerty is participating in an innovative approach to taking the county out to his constituents, and he's grouping himself with other elected officials who are doing group community meetings. He has dedicated himself to finding better access to transportation in his precinct, quality of life, water and wastewater projects. He's such a great addition to the court, and he is a lot of fun to be around. Commissioner Carlos Leon, who is always on the lookout for best practices that he knows we should adopt in order to improve operations. And his commitment to accountability has helped tremendously when it comes time for us to make tough decisions. He and Commissioner Haggerty have both been focused on ensuring those annexes that I told you about connect with their constituents' needs. Commissioner Leon's wisdom and experience adds so much to our decision making. Commissioner Vince Bettis, who, as I mentioned before, initiated the monumental reforms in criminal justice, also has led the efforts to bring increased access to mass transit to his precinct. And he is always reminding us of the need to honor our past, especially the past in the Lower Valley, like the Mission Trail. He really is one of the smartest people I know, and I know we're all grateful that he's on the court. Commissioner David Stout, who's been my bankruptcy buddy for the last few months, his commitment to health care, especially during these challenging times, has been impressive. He has spent enormous amounts of time with us, vetting proposals, plans, pro formas, asking tough questions, and coming up with great ideas. And he's done it with a view toward protecting the taxpayer while saving a hospital. I'm grateful to him for his leadership. And I also want to say that some of the reforms I talked about before couldn't have been possible without former members of the court, like Ana Perez, who's now one of our judges, and Patrick Ablin, who's now happily retired. All of these leaders deserve all the credit for the amazing transformation that you all have had a ringside seat to at the county. I'm so grateful to them, I'm inspired by them, and I think we're very lucky to have their service. In closing, I want to tell you that the county is like any other large organization. There will always be a crisis around the next corner. There will always be tumultuous events that end up on the front page day after day after day. Bob Moore. Just kidding. But one of the things that there is no absence of at your county is courageous, strong, collaborative, and more importantly, transformative leadership. I walk into the courthouse, your courthouse, every single day with my head held high because I am lucky enough to work with these incredible people. Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a wonderful afternoon. I appreciate it.